Hi, this is Dr.Repole again at Jacksonville Health and Wellness Center, and today we're talking about leaky gut syndrome. So what the heck is it? The actual name is called intestinal permeability. That's kind of the medical term. The lay term is going to be called leaky gut syndrome. So in order to understand it, and this is the exact way that I explain it to my patients here at the office, is I think we have to look at normal digestion. So we eat foods as carbs, fats, and proteins. So I want you to think of carbs, fats, and proteins as like, say, a beaded necklace. We eat these beaded necklaces, and the job of our digestion as it goes through our mouth, into our esophagus, into our stomach, and then into our small intestine, is to take this beaded necklaces made up of these large molecules of carbs, fats, and protein, and cleave them into single beads. So carbs would be cleaved into the single bead called sugar. Protein would be an amino acid, and fats into a fatty acid. And that's really the way the digestive system works. So as the food then enters in through the bloodstream after it kind of leaves the small intestine, the sugar is used to basically burn energy. The protein is used to build muscle, say, and the fat is used to produce hormones. And everything is fine. So with intestinal permeability or leaky gut, there is this mucosal border, these immune cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. And you can think of it as like poking holes in areas of the gastrointestinal tract. So remember, we're eating food and this long chain of beads, and as we eat it and it goes through our esophagus, into our stomach, into our intestine, instead of getting broken down into these small components or these small beads, it gets broken down into chunks, say of 3-4 beads. And then these 3-4 beads migrate into the bloodstream. The problem is that the body only understands the glucose or the sugar, the amino acids, and the fatty acid. So when it sees this large chain of molecules, it actually thinks it's a foreign invader. And whenever there's a foreign invader in the body produces an antibody response. So let's just say we eat a food and it's not broken down properly, it goes into the bloodstream, we get an antibody production by the body. One antibody takes that one chain of bead, eats it. Another antibody takes another chain of bead and eats it. But the problem is it's not one for one. There's a lot more antibodies produced than there are these little tiny segments of chains. So now the food goes away, right? And the antibodies do what they're needed to do. And now we have what we call circulating antibodies in the systemic circulation. So the antibodies then go and look for other areas in the human body that have a similar sequence. We are what we eat, right? So what happens is we break down the food into these small different beads, and then we rearrange those beads in different types to make our thyroid or to make the brain tissue. But they're made up of the very foods that we're eating in different sequences than, say, the food that we had ingested. So for some reason, gluten resembles the thyroid. It resembles brain tissue. Dairy resembles the pancreas. And other foods resemble different areas in the body. And so what we get with intestinal permeability is we get a process of autoimmunity, meaning the body then is attacking self-tissue. And we can get issues like hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's. We can get issues with brain degeneration. And there's a whole host of issues that can go. But the crazy thing is it doesn't often have to manifest as a gastrointestinal, say, issue. We can have gut permeability issues without having, say, constipation and diarrhea or bloating. It's more common to have gut intestinal permeability issues with gastrointestinal issues, but they don't necessarily have to coincide. So the GI system is much more than, say, just a digestive system. We know that we house anywhere from 60 to 80% of the body's immune system in there. We get about 3 to 5 pounds of bugs in there that are there as a symbiotic relationship to help digest our food and break down the food. So what causes this breakdown in the gastrointestinal tract, which then leads to immune dysfunction, which then ultimately leads to autoimmunity, say, as an example that we had just given? Well, it's a standard American diet. You know, it's the bad foods, the processed foods that we're eating create a lot of inflammation, which then poke holes in the diet. It's the overconsumption of animal products, especially that contain lots of saturated fat and cholesterol. And animal products contain anywhere from 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000-fold increase in the inflammatory response just by the amount of microorganisms that you ingest every time you eat, say, a piece of dead flesh. So there are many, many reasons. Stress also will cause a decrease in the secretion of something called secretory SIGA, which is this mucosal boundary in immune cells that lie the gastrointestinal tract. So there's many reasons. The treatment approach then is going to be number one, testing for this, and that's something that can be done very easily. You know, at the office, we usually start out with a urine test to kind of look to see if some of these issues are prevalent, and then we use a protocol here at the office that helps to remove the toxicity, to start repairing the gastrointestinal tract, and then re-inoculating with the appropriate probiotics and bacteria. And they have to be done in a specific sequence in order for it to be very effective. And so gastrointestinal, gut permeability issues, leaky gut issues is more than just the digestive issues. This can affect the entire body. It can attack all of the organs of the body, as well as cause neurodegeneration in the brain as well. And so this is definitely something that needs to be tested for or looked at, especially if you're having some chronic health challenges. Thanks so much for listening.